Direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central, and here's your host,
Welcome to
Bob
another great
Hickey.
episode of Foxborough Central. I am Bob Hickey. I am your host, and I'm glad that you took a little bit of time to join me and my guests as we talk about the people, events, and organizations that make Foxborough truly the gem of Norfolk County. I'm honored to be joined today by our Regional Food and Drug Administration Information Officer, specialist, guru, expert, Joe Rilanitis. How are you doing, sir?
Bob, thanks. Great introduction. I love it.
Well, there you go. If nothing else, if you're going to take the time to come all the way down from Worcester to visit with us here in Foxborough, I'll give you the build-up.
I appreciate that. I love it.
Well, it's glad to have you down here, and it's always a pleasure because we talk about so many interesting things and learning what the Food and Drug Administration is doing to protect us as consumers. And we've had conversations in the past about pet food from China, about obesity, about the flu, about so many different topics. I'd like to go a little one-off, and you are a font of information. And something that we had mentioned that you have information on that I'm fascinated about is tattoos.
Tattoos. Yes, that's true.
The Food and Drug Administration regulates tattoos.
A lot of it we do. We do.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon. You know, body art has been around since day one. It's nothing new, and we've seen it trend up in the past 20 years now. I think about 22 million Americans have tattoos, have body art on their bodies. It's a big audience.
How many Americans are there?
308 million, 310 million, yeah.
So that's a significant chunk of
It
us,
is.
huh?
It's a chunk of people. But we're looking at, the FDA looks at that from both the start and the finish. Quality of inks, quality of needles, cleanliness, and so forth and so on, are regulated by both state and federal agencies in legitimate tattoo parlors. And you know, you sometimes when you're relatively young and you get an image you want somewhere on your body, you just go and do it, and you spend the money, you do the artwork, you know, put up with the pain and discomfort. And you've got a tattoo for life, you think.
Right. So, you know, let's talk about that. And as youth, we all have indiscretions. We all have things that we think are great ideas. And I'm not for or against tattoos. I do not have a tattoo. But I do remember a certain night back when I was 19 or 20 years old. This is before the drinking age became 21, so don't get on me about drinking age. But it was I'm of a certain age, so relax, everybody. So there was a night when I probably had maybe too much enjoyment, and there was a thought going through my
I know where this is
brain.
going.
Well, luckily the place I went, and it's actually a kiosk in a mall, but they said, no, you have to have a 24-hour waiting period of some sort of thing. And luckily they did, because the next morning I thought, ooh, that was a really bad decision I almost made. And so I was saved from myself by some regulation somewhere. And I don't know if I've ever given it a second thought since then. So now here we are in 2015-ish, depending upon when you're watching us. And tattoos are bigger than ever. There's
huge.
Television programs on cable with competitions for the best ink, and all these people are getting inked, and the designs are getting to be phenomenal. And there's beautiful pictures, and people can get, if people want a tattoo of Howard Stern on them, they can get a tattoo. There's just so much going on in the industry, and it's so accessible and readily available. So now I'm an employer, and I'm an employee, and I'm looking for a job, and I've got ink running down the side of my face. But I want this professional job because I want to work and I want to make money. But this potential employer is looking at me askance, saying, you know, you probably don't fit our image.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Well, you've got to get an
Which
academy.
luckily I don't have to do, because I was not allowed to make that decision back in 19, and so I don't have to worry about that. But unfortunately, these decisions do get made, and then we have a little bit of buyer's remorse.
You do.
Maybe 10 years later, but still here we are.
People have that. In fact, a couple years ago, the Society for Dermatological Surgery indicated that on the average, about 100,000 people a year are having tattoo removal procedures. It doesn't mean the trend's going away. It's just that means people are getting a little bit older, looking at the professional image and trying to change accordingly.
Well, we've heard the advertisements on the radio for the procedure. So in addition to tattoos being regulated, let's talk about tattoo removal. So let's talk about tattoos in the first place. And it's such a trend now, and some of the artwork, we all have to admit, is beautiful and fascinating.
Phenomenal. It is.
And we go to the restaurants and the bars, and we're watching, and what better icebreaker is there than to say, hey, that's a really cool tattoo. Let's talk about tattoos.
Yeah, well, the ink is a concern. The cleanliness of the facility, regulated by both state and federal, the devices by the federal and the facilities by the state, have certain criteria that they have to meet. You don't want people, tattoo artists, not to be licensed. You don't want them to be, mixing different ink and using different needles on different people.
Because that can spread disease.
Big time. Hepatitis comes to mind, big time. So you really need to have that in the forefront of your mind when you go and seek a tattoo. Quality of professionalism, quality of cleanliness, responsibility, and as you indicated when you were a younger lad, you might want to reflect on the image and the that you want on your body for the rest of your life, allegedly, before you hop in. That's why that 24-hour wait and review time probably saved you, Bob, and probably did.
Well, mine was going to be a lightning bolt. Now that I think back, I have no idea why. But
colorful,
I guess.
19, I don't know. But anyways, so that's where you start right there. Criteria, critique, look at the place prior to. But that doesn't mean that 6 years after you get that rose with a girl's name in it or whatever the case might be, or that kicking horse.
So I'm no longer dating Rose, I'm now dating Nancy.
Right.
What do I do?
And time to change venues and change body art. That's where the problems really come in. Tattoos hang around in your dermis. That's the lower level of skin. Epidermis is on top, dermis is below that. And they're made to be permanent. They're in there and they're put in there deep.
Because the tattoos go underneath the epidermis, which sloughs off every 7
That's correct.
And so you lose that, but the dermis layer is the one that's permanent and stays.
And that's where the tattoo and all its color and splendor and names of people you now want to forget hang around. So there's a laser procedure for that, laser removal. It's a pulsating laser. Expensive device. A person has to know how to use it. A dermatologist will know how to use it. And what they'll do is they'll shoot laser beams into the tattoo. Now,
laser being light.
That vibrating light that just breaks up the ink molecules or the ink adhesions in your dermis. It's an interesting technique. The devices are approved by the Food and Drug Administration. You have to know how to use them, and a good dermatologist will know how to do it. Right. They'll know your level of pain, because it's a lot. And I haven't gone through this, but it's a lot like getting hit by a spattering of hot bacon grease, if you can imagine that. That can be a little bit dicey.
Interesting.
A little good analogy.
That's great. Yes.
I read that. A little uncomfortable. And the different inks, Bob, and they use a lot of them. Some respond to the laser better than others.
Okay.
Your darker inks, which are really common, your dark blues, your blacks, your shades of brown.
The ones that used to be.
That's correct.
The predominant ones.
Yeah. They'll break up relatively easy. A couple times and a couple laser treatments, and they'll break up and metabolize out of your system. It's the other colors, the greens, the light yellows, the reds, which resist the laser beam a lot. They really do. They resist the pulsations of the laser, and they're harder to remove. In fact, sometimes you can't get rid of them completely.
Really?
And as one of your staff members mentioned, there's oftentimes scarring as a result of it. So you've got a lengthy process. You're not always guaranteed of it being fully successful. Scarring could be a possibility. Discomfort is always part of the equation.
Well, tattoos themselves are uncomfortable to get.
I guess they are.
It's, and I'm not you're the expert, I'm not the expert, but it's simply injecting the ink into your dermis layer, and so it's got to be poke, 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 poke,
It's
poke.
repetitious and a little uncomfortable, but I mean, some people approach it with a lot of spirits aboard, and then they're dedicated to the body art. But you're right, it's a huge industry, and they can be extremely attractive, and they're ancient. I mean, people have adorned their bodies for years with tattoos, but in a changing economic situation where you want to remove the one from your neck or around your ear or whatever the case might be.
Well, that was always the taboo, wasn't it? Face art is the one thing that people just always stayed away from. But now more and more, you see, in fact, this season on Survivor, you see one of the participants. It's one of the few programs I watch, and yes, I like it, so get over it, everybody. I just like Survivor. That is what I am. And one of the participants, she has facial art, and it's somewhat interesting or off-putting, I guess, depending upon where your sensibilities lie. But it's a definite statement.
Oh, it is.
As far as who you are and what you plan on doing, I guess, because what happens if 15 years down the road that individual, that young lady, decides she wants to do something that's maybe customer facing, maybe just a professional appearance, that this doesn't necessarily embrace that lifestyle.
Right. It's exotic in some.
Very
in some cases, it is exotic, and it's somewhat appealing. But you're right. We change. We change our attitudes. We change our economic situation. Society changes away now. You know, tattoos are real vogue now. But this generation of children coming up, will they adhere to tattoos? I don't know.
Big hair in the 80s was a fashion statement.
Big time.
But we don't have it now, but hair is something that we can grow, cut, do whatever. And of course, my hairstyle and your hairstyle never changes, right?
Now, what recommendation did you make to your children on tattoos? Or did you? Or do you have to?
You know, it's an interesting question. So my kids, whom I love dearly, they never really pushed it. I think we had conversations, we're very honest about it, but it never became an issue because I don't think they were of a mindset to get them. And I'm wondering if that's because as parents, neither of us, my wife, Kathy, or I don't have tattoos, and I wonder if that's part of it. If we would have had tattoos, would it have been a different conversation? If they would have seen us with tattoos, would our kids, like most kids who want to be like their parents, and when we live with them and they live with us and we are the ones that they grow up looking at, emulating, wanting to be like, would they not have? And so I think as a conversation is going to happen more and more, it's interesting that you bring it up because folks, as we make these decisions and as we have these tattoos, then they have kids and they're going to be seeing their parents and it's perfectly normal. And I'm not saying it's not perfectly normal. And I guess that's where we come to, as a free society, we have certainly every right to make a decision and do what we want as long as it doesn't interfere with somebody else's rights. But then what do we do if we decide we make a mistake?
Right.
And haircuts, I can make the mohawk mistake. You know, we can, if our kids say we wanted that, purple hair, okay, smile, it happens. We grow through it, we grow out of it. Tattoos, that's a whole different conversation. That's a commitment.
Yeah.
A haircut is a choice.
Right.
A piercing is an option. A tattoo, that's a definite
And
choice.
the road away from body art is expensive, oftentimes uncomfortable, probably even more so than the application of the initial, tattoo several years earlier. The results usually pretty good, but you can have scarring. There's no doubt about that. So it's it behooves everyone who is into the tattoo image to take a long, hard look. The FDA offers the safety regulations in place for people to back out of it if they have a tattoo that they don't want. We are seeing the number of tattoo removals increase over the past few years. Reports from different medical and dermatological organizations indicate that more people are coming around to have them removed. But a lot of people are still getting them.
Right. So in 22 million Americans, that works out to roughly between 7 and 8% of the population has them. So it's certainly something that's a significant segment of who we are.
It's a chunk. It is.
It's a chunk. And so you mentioned lasers. It wasn't so long ago lasers did not exist and certainly didn't exist for this type of application. So With lasers, is this technology mature technology, or is it still growing? Is it still maturing?
Well, you ask the best questions, and you can make the bureaucrats dance. You know that.
You're just giving great information, and I'm following the conversations. That's why I love having this program. I'm thanking you folks, by the way, for joining me and my guest, Joe Rilanitis, who is our Food and Drug Administration information specialist, who is sharing today about tattoos. And right now we're talking about laser removal, which in my mind is still new technology. And maybe I'm a fuddy-duddy about it, because I'm not. I mean, I grew up, thinking phasers and lasers with Star Trek were a whole futuristic thing, and now they're part of everyday life. Right. And so where is the technology with this? Is this mature?
Well, it evolves. I mean, there are other options for removing them. You can have a skin abrasion. You can have them rubbed out.
That's what I've always thought of.
Which is tougher.
Well, and then you had spoken earlier about the dermis versus the epidermis layer, and I really hadn't understood that thoroughly, but now it makes more sense, because the epidermis sloughs off, but a tattoo being permanent goes deeper. So how do you scrape off? And that just sounds awfully painful.
That sounds archaic and medieval. It really does. Or you can have them actually cut out, thin layer of. I know. Once again, a painful, less exciting but very evasive type of removal process.
I hope you're going to tell us that lasers are the wave of the future.
Well, they are evolving.
And I don't have a tattoo, but I'm just. Oh.
They're effective, and with all devices, they update, they evolve, and probably become a lot more user-friendly. But they're a good approach for a bad problem, you might say. If you want to get rid of your tattoo, if you're really unhappy with it, and you can afford the discomfort and the money for repeat visits, which sometimes is part of the equation, your laser is a great option, Bob. It really is. And we are seeing, as I mentioned, increased tattoo removal procedures. And the evolution of the device and the mindset might indicate that this is a phenomenon that's damping back a little bit. I don't know. I haven't seen the stats for the number of people that are getting tattoos, but I know 1 in 8 of that 22 million people are unhappy with their tattoos.
Really?
Whether they have them removed or not, that's up to them.
Not just because they had the word Rose, now they're dating Lindsay. And they want it.
Possibly part of it, I don't know. But there are other options. You can do the temporary tattoo. Henna is as old as any tattoo in body art format, and it's removable and it wears out.
It fades away.
It does. And henna can be very exotic as well. And if you don't like the look, it's gone in
I think a lot of us have
3 or
gone
4
on
days.
vacation and
sure.
Bought that henna tattoo.
Yeah.
I've not, but my family has, and it's actually been very interesting and nice and exotic.
Oh, they are.
You're right; it does fade off.
Yeah, they do. But the thing about a henna is sometimes you have a mild skin rash. You're allergic to the coal tar dyes, whatever dyes are in there, and so you have to be aware of that. But I mean, everything has something.
So it's always fascinating. I wasn't planning on going down this path, but we're talking about tattoos, and so let's talk about henna real fast. My last experience in being exposed to henna tattoos was I was on the boardwalk in San Diego, and there were a number of henna tattoo establishments. And it was interesting, it was exotic. They had all the different types of artwork, but how are they regulated? Since you know everything, I'm just going to toss this out.
I think you caught me there.
Did I?
Once again...
but henna is not into the skin. It's a layer on top of the skin.
It's a color. It's basically like a paint.
Right.
It's an inky paint. I don't know if the... And I honestly don't know that, Robert. You got me on that one.
But you had mentioned about potential skin irritation, and so with any pain,
that's an awareness thing. Yeah.
Right. So as with any pain, it's the individual and how they tolerate.
That's correct.
The henna ink,
Yeah.
but because it's not being injected in, I'm sure there's a lot less regulatory oversight.
There would have to be. There would have to be.
Just as with face painting at the carnival.
Oh, sure.
Or at the McGinty Fun Day here, we have face painting. As a parent if your kid can tolerate the face paint.
It's a buyer beware type of thing. It really is. That's where common sense really comes in.
So we're not talking about that. We're talking about real, honest to goodness, inject in the body, permanent. I love Rose. I love Lindsay.
Right. Those wonderful inks that stick with you for a long time to come. But henna is an option, and you're right. It's the henna look can be extremely just extremely exotic. And the beauty of that is you can wash it off, or it fades out in a couple of weeks, and you're good to go without a laser coming in or a skin abrasion or something like that.
So maybe somebody who's thinking of getting a tattoo would be wise to experiment with a henna and see if it's something they really, really are fascinated with and want.
Yeah, it's true. It's wonderful to see trends. It's nice to have, the state and federal government stepping in a bit and making sure those who practice and administrate the tattoos know what they're doing, and that the dermatologists and the medical community that needs to correct the damage or change things know what they're doing. So it gives everybody sort of a wide gamut to be free and enjoy.
Well, there you go. And that's what America is all about, being free and to enjoy ourselves. So I'm going to give you the last word. Again, I've been very honored to have our guest, Joe Rolanitis, with us from the Food and Drug Administration. And he's going to give us the last word about what to look for when getting a tattoo and what to look for when getting a tattoo removed. But before he does that, I want to thank you for joining us. And as we wrap up this episode, on behalf of all the family here at Foxborough Cable Access, thank you for watching us. If you've missed any of the information, you want to check it out again, look up our website at fcatv.org and click on the link for videos in Foxborough Central, and you'll see us in all of our glory. Joe, last word.
Clean needles, tattoo artists who know what they're doing and take responsibility and take it seriously. Get the right design that you're happy with. Should you change your mind down the road a ways, remember there is laser technology and other technologies for removing tattoos. It can be a little bit uncomfortable. It might not be fully what you want, but you can sort of reverse things a bit.
And the dark colored inks are easier to remove than the light colored inks. So if you are of a happy mindset and you're comfortable with the darks, go with the darks. Because as intelligent people, we all know that we can make a choice later down the road that might require removal. The lights are going to be very painful and difficult. So until next time, folks, I want to thank you. Until you get that tattoo, stay with us here in Foxborough Cable Access, and I hope to see you next time. Take care, folks.
Thanks.